702.
Health and Wellness.
24 minutes before 12 o'clock. On our Health and Wellness feature this morning, we're talking about the impact of sugar consumption on adults, because sugar is everywhere. It's in our morning coffee, it's in our packaged snacks, your sauces, even foods that we don't really think of as sweet. And while many of us associate sugar with these childhood treats we used to have or an occasional indulgence, the reality is that as adults, we are consuming far more sugar than we actually realized on a daily basis. So as we juggle these busy lives, stress and convenience eating, sugar has quietly become a major part of modern adult diet. But what does that actually mean for our health? What does it mean for our energy levels, our weight, our mood, and long-term well-being? We've invited Cari Erasmus, who is a registered dietitian with the Heart and Stroke Foundation, to guide us through this conversation and advise us on what we can do better to manage our consumption of sugar. Cari, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a huge pleasure. Always lovely to talk about these very important things.
Yeah. From a dietitian's perspective, why is sugar such an important topic for adult health?
Yes, so that's because, as you mentioned, in recent times, we are having lots and lots more sugar than we should. And this excessive consumption is linked to increased risk of chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes, heart disease. So sugars are very energy dense, and that can result in either you're taking in too many calories, also poor nutrient intake, so lots of energy but not enough nutrients. It also can be bad for digestion and cause increased inflammation in the body that causes all of these chronic diseases.
So sugar itself then is not necessarily the problem. It is the quantity and the frequency with which we consume it.
So a very important fact about this is that there are different types of sugars. So you can say, yes, it's the quantity and frequency, but it's also the type of sugars, because there's a clear distinction between added sugar and natural sugars and how they impact our bodies and our health. So natural sugars, for example, are found naturally in your whole foods like fruits, vegetables, dairy products. And while these foods contain sugars, they also contain fiber, lots of vitamins and minerals, or good bacteria that helps the digestive system, which at the end result is really beneficial for your health. But then you also get added sugar. And on the other hand, these are sugars that are not naturally present, but only added later during processing or preparation. So that's, for example, your table sugar, your corn syrups, your honeys, stuff like that in your sweetened beverages, your baked goods, and so on. And this is really the type of sugar that, number one, we're consuming a lot more of, but number two, really has that non-beneficial effect on our health that puts us at risk for things like insulin resistance, blood sugar problems, and so on.
How does excess sugar affect energy levels and blood sugar regulation?
Yes, so sugar and insulin, they are the two ones that really affect your blood sugar. So as you eat something that contains sugar and that sugar is released into your blood, that triggers your body to secrete insulin. And insulin is then what's going to cause your cells to uptake that sugar out of your blood. So when you have lots of sugar, there's insulin in response, and then it takes the sugar out of the blood. But what happens is, because we are having so much sugar and so often, our bodies are getting resistant. So it gets so used to having all of the sugar in the blood that it no longer seems abnormal. So over time, less and less insulin is released, and that means that sugar stays in your blood vessels and then that's when severe damage can happen in the blood vessel and just in the whole metabolism, our mitochondria. All of this gets influenced, and yes, and then that's when we see the risk of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes.
What role does sugar play in weight gain, particularly around the abdominal area?
Yes, so sugar plays a key role in weight gain. When we consume high amounts of sugar, it gets metabolized by the liver, and that excess sugar gets converted to fat. So if we're having lots of energy, we're not using it, that gets converted to fat. And often that fat can be visceral fat around the abdominal organs. And this is especially worrying because it's this visceral fat around the organs and in the abdominal area that is actually linked to chronic diseases, especially hypertension and heart disease. So we see people that have a higher waist circumference or a larger abdominal area are actually more at risk for high blood pressure and heart disease.
And what are the consequences of this excessive consumption of sugar as adults? I mean, I'm thinking about the strong link, for instance, between sugar consumption and conditions like type 2 diabetes and, heart diseases. What are the other consequences people must be aware of?
Yes, no. So, like you mentioned, first of all, chronic diseases is a major one. So that's a major consequence. Of course, it's also cumulative. So once you have too much sugar and, for example, you develop insulin resistance, your risk is higher for diabetes. But also, if you, for example, have high blood pressure and you're taking in too much sugar, that increases your risk even more so for something like heart disease or even stroke. But then, on the other hand, there are some other consequences that we don't always think of immediately. So one of the things is that more and more research is actually showing how sugar influences our digestive health. And so in our digestive system, we have tens of thousands of hundreds of bacteria, beneficial bacteria that help with digestion, but also influences our whole metabolism and our overall health. So a high sugar diet actually decreases the amount of beneficial bacteria, and then that can cause more and more inflammation in the body, and that can affect the whole body. We also know, for example, that our digestive system is really linked to our mood. For example, people with a high sugary diet, there's some evidence that also shows that they have higher rates of depression. So there are serious consequences to unhealthy diets.
And I was saying earlier that there's some food that we eat on a daily basis that probably has, hidden sugar. And I wonder if you can share with us some commonly hidden sugars in adults' diets that we need to be aware of.
Yes, definitely. So one of the major contributors, if not the highest contributor of hidden sugar in our diets, is actually sugar-sweetened beverages. So your cold drinks, your fizzy drinks have large amounts of sugar. I mean, one can of a fizzy drink can have up to 9 to 10 teaspoons of sugar, just one can, and often we'll find ourselves consuming it very quickly and definitely consuming more than one can a day. So you might easily get up to 20 teaspoons of sugar in your diet just by consuming 2 cans of cold drink. So that is a really big one. We see that adults who drink one sugary drink daily are 27% more likely to be overweight. And for children, that's even worse. So children who drink one sugary drink daily are 55% more likely to be overweight. And then drinking 2 or more of these sugary drinks can increase your risk of developing diabetes by at least 24%. So it's definitely, our drinks are really something that we need to look out for.
And if I decide to make changes now, what happens in the body when someone reduces their sugar intake? Like, do those cravings actually decrease?
Yes, so that's a great question. So sugar intake and cravings are very related because our brain has a reward system. So when we have energy-dense foods or high sugary foods, we get increase of dopamine, and that leaves us wanting more. It also, that dopamine can bypass our fullness signal, so we don't feel full and we can eat more. Often, if we think about these sugary foods, they're also hyperpalatable, meaning they have been so chemically modified or processed that they dissolve very quickly in the mouth. So we eat more and more, or we drink more and more. So yes, definitely, once we stop having these, there is a short period where you still get these cravings. You're going through, you're not getting as much dopamine as you used to, and that can cause cravings, and then your blood glucose levels, of course, also need to adjust, because now where you were getting these blood sugar spikes because of the high sugary food, and now you're decreasing that, your blood glucose levels tend to drop, and that can trigger cravings as well, because your brain is not necessarily knowing what's going on, so it's kind of triggering you to think, oh, I need that high sugary food, because your brain is worried, why is your blood glucose levels dropping now? So that's the first few days, but what's great and a motivator for people is that you do have an adaptation phase or taste adaptation, where once your blood glucose levels or your blood sugar levels start to normalize, your insulin sensitivity improves, so your body is better to responding to sugar intake. Your digestive system, that gut bacteria that I was speaking about, starts to build up again and improve. And then you get craving reductions, your dopamine receptors normalize, you reduce sugar cravings over time, and also your taste adapts, meaning you get used to food that is not as sweet anymore, and you actually start to prefer these types of food.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to some listeners' questions in a moment, but when it comes to men, for instance, how does this excess sugar impact testosterone levels, and is there an impact on muscle mass as well?
Yes, so insulin or sugar, let's say sugar, we know it's highly related to insulin, and insulin is again associated with different hormones. So in women, for example, it would be estrogen, and in men it would be testosterone. So there is actually evidence that shows that men who follow a high sugar diet with low nutrients, actually that causes insulin resistance, and insulin resistance is associated with lower testosterone. So if you are more insulin resistant, you do have lower testosterone, and of course testosterone influences muscle mass. Lower testosterone means lower muscle mass. So yes, definitely something that men do need to look at is making sure they don't have too much sugar in their diet. All
right, let's get to the listeners' questions now on 072 7021 702. That's where your voice notes are coming through. Your calls on 011 883 0702.
Good morning, Clement and your guest. I would like to know if there are any risks of fructose, the sugar that we get from fruits. Can one consume too much fructose? And if so, what could be the health risks there?
Okay, Cari?
Yes, that's a great question. So fructose, as mentioned, is naturally present in fruits. And while it is a sugar, what's great about when you consume it in the package that it comes with is it comes with fiber. And fiber is so great because it actually helps slow that sugar release into the blood. So when you eat the fruit, it's not released as quickly into your bloodstream as, let's say, a juice would be, because it has all that fiber. So the insulin response is very different. So instead of getting that insulin resistance, you get a controlled insulin response, which is great. Of course, you also get lots of vitamins and minerals that we know is very important for other areas in the body. But what I have to say also is that for people with specific conditions, so if you are already insulin resistant or you are a diabetic, you do have to consider that it still has fructose or it still has that sugar. So there, it would be important just to control the amount. So for diabetics, for example, we say not to have too much fruit at one time, because at the end of the day, you don't want too much sugar released into the blood at one time. So one fruit at a time, but of course you can have more than one a day.
Okay. Ben, you calling us from Pretoria. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Sharp. Go ahead.
Good stuff. I just got a following question, please. So I used to be a fatty. About a year and 8 months ago, I started the keto diet, subsequently exercising. In total, lost about 38 kilograms.
Wow.
Since February last year, I've not been on the keto diet anymore, so I've incorporated starches, etc., etc. I gym and train very hard, but once a week on a Friday, I properly indulge in sugar.
How much
and
do you
by properly,
indulge,
I mean all the way, dude. I go, for instance, in a movie, it takes a time, hour and a half, I'd have a Rolos, Sally Williams nougat, licorice all sorts, King Cone Bowl 1, and a slab of chocolate, and just for good measure, some speckled eggs as well. But for the rest of the time, I don't have any sugar.
Okay.
But on Fridays, I have all the sugar.
Yeah, and you and I are the same, my friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's ask what Cari has to say there. Yeah. Cari?
Yes, well, first of all, well done. It really sounds like you've made some positive behavior changes, and that's really the first step to any kind of improvement. Yeah, I think the one thing that we do still need to be cautious of is that major blood sugar spike. So, yes, I am totally for indulging. Especially, a healthy, balanced diet is all about 80-20, basing your diet on healthy things, but also indulging in the foods that give you enjoyment. But we have to be careful. It sounds like when you do indulge, you go
all the way
out. Yeah, so just be cautious because after that period, it does mean that you will have a major blood sugar spike. And that spike can be dangerous. We have talked about damage to blood vessels and so yeah, I would say definitely do indulge, but maybe not as like maybe instead of once a week so majorly, slightly more frequently and slightly less so that you do have that more controlled blood sugar spike.
Yeah. Ben, all the best, my friend. Is honey a good substitute, Cari? And can you have it daily with a coffee or tea? That's another question we're getting.
Yes, so contrary to popular belief, honey is actually very energy dense. If you look at honey and sugar, it's very similar in the type of blood sugar response that you do get. So it's definitely something that still needs to be controlled as much as you would control sugar. Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Clement. Question for your guest. White sugar compared to brown sugar. Now, I have about 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day, black, with 2 teaspoons of sugar. Sometimes less, sometimes more. What is the difference between consuming coffee with white sugar and brown sugar? Is brown sugar not as dangerous, or am I ill-informed about that?
Thank you. Cari?
Yes, that is also a very popular misconception. In actual fact, there is a very, very small difference between white and brown sugar. They both will still give you a similar blood sugar response. So definitely the brown sugar does also need to be as limited as white sugar.
The sugar, what about starches, carbohydrates? That's huge in the South African diet. You know, your rice, your pap, that kind of stuff. Because carbohydrates get converted into sugar in the body, and what is not used gets stored. So that's the main reason, I reckon, for the high rates of diabetes and obesity and that. I mean, obviously, sugary drinks do have an effect, but they're expensive. So majority of people don't go buy a can or 2 cans a day or whatever. It's just too expensive. But our main diet is very high in carbohydrates, which are sugar. Okay.
Cari?
Yeah, that's also a great question. And when it comes to sugar, as he mentioned that at the end of the day, it does get, our carbohydrates does get digested into sugar. So when you think about the carbohydrates that you're eating, it's all about the package that you're getting it in, because yes, you are getting the sugar, but you need to focus more on what are the other things that I'm getting. For example, if you eat a pack of slab chips, you are getting the sugar, but you're not getting much nutrients. If you eat a serving of brown rice, yes, you're getting the sugar. You're also getting fiber, which is more beneficial because it decreases the rates which the sugar is released. You're getting vitamins, nutrients. You're getting phytochemicals, which is very important for your digestive system, which improves overall health. So it's all about the type of carbohydrates and what are the other things that I'm getting when I consume these carbohydrates.
Cari Erasmus, thank you. Always great chatting to you. Registered dietitian with the Heart and Stroke Foundation.